And before the live streaming starts, it might be worth just confirming to members that the intention is for the portal Okay, so this meeting is live webcast and it will be on YouTube later on. And any member, press or public may record and take photographs, except where there are confidential or exempt items. Now I have two apologies. One is from our chair, Councillor Ahmed, and one is from Councillor Jenkins. Does anyone have any declarations of interest?
Yeah, I think I should be declaring an interest in Ahmed and non-exec director of Civica.
I've got a standing declaration of a non-peculiar interest in Birmingham Airport. It's on the agenda here anyway. But it's a fly with the angels.
Anybody else? No? Okay, brilliant. Action notes and action trackers, we have two. There is the percentage of interims across the JNC structure. The additional information requested has not yet been received and scrutiny officers are chasing this up. The report on how cost of living emergency fund is being spent. Christian, to provide an update.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think at the last meeting there was a request, I'm not sure if it's gone round, but there was a request for the cost of living programme report that went to Cabinet in autumn. Just to confirm, that went to Cabinet on the 11th of October. That set out a number of recommendations that were approved in relation to delegation expenditure, delegation in relation to procurement spend. And there's been quite a lot of work that's taken place in this area around making things sort of a little bit more transparent and open. So in due course, those officer delegated decisions will be available to view online. They have been taken, and in due course they will be set up, and members will be able to, and the public will be able to view those on CMIS. We're just setting a few things up on CMIS to allow that to happen. But moving forward, all spend and all delegations in relation to this item that went to Cabinet in October will be available to view. There was one additional Cabinet member decision that related to the 11th of October Cabinet decision, which was taken by Councillor Cotton on the 24th of November, which is available to view on CMIS at the moment in relation to emergency food aid. So I think in due course, hopefully early in the new year, I'll be able to send around both the Cabinet member report, the delegated reports, and where you can find them moving forward, and also provide you with a link back to the Cabinet report from the 11th of October Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, the financial monitoring 2022 and 23 month 7. We're to consider the month 7 financial monitoring report considered at Cabinet on the 13th of December. And officers in attendance for this item are Sarah Pitt, Director of Finance, Fiona Greenway, Interim Assistant Director, Financial Performance and Insight. She will be online. And Mohammed Sajid, Interim Head of Financial Strategy.
Sorry, Chair, could I be really rude?
Yeah.
I forgot to mention something on the cost of living, which is important. Coordinating Open Scrutiny Committee now actually having a portfolio update with Councillor Cotton on the 17th of January, not 17th, in early January. And there will be further information provided to scrutiny on the cost of living, which relates to your previous action. Apologies, Chair. I thought it was important to bring that to the committee's attention.
No, that's fine. Not to worry. Thank you.
Sorry, sir.
Right, so this is the month 7 financial position report. We've been coming every month with updates on the financial position in year. we've always done scrutiny around that. We're going to Cabinet every single month now as well, in particular since we declared cost of living crisis, and just keeping a close eye on council finances. So the month 7 report now shows an overspend risk of 106.6 million. When we talk about overspend risk, this isn't the individual items themselves being a risk, because some of those items are cost incurred, so they are what they are. This is a risk of overspending against the entire bottom line, against the annual budget for the council. The risk being that we cannot manage and mitigate that through alternative options. So that's why it's deemed a risk. 106.6 is the gross position. So I'll talk you through some of the things that bring that down and where we are. This does assume that all budgeted savings are delivered or mitigated. So we have a range of savings built into the budget for this year to be delivered. Where they are red risk, they are still being deemed to be deliverable unless we have absolutely at this point marked them as undelivered. So if they don't deliver that will increase that risk further. We have been reviewing reserves all year, continue to review our reserves. This is good housekeeping, in fairness, and releasing those reserves where they're no longer required. So some of that will help the bottom line position. We hold a financial resilience reserve, and that is a reserve where we have essentially thought of every risk that could possibly come at us financially. So we've sat down and thought about all the types of risks that could occur. We have quantified those, and then we apply a deflator. So we add them all up, we apply a deflator to it to say, well, likelihood of all of those hitting at the same time. We hope not to have perfect storms, which feels quite odd at this moment because it feels like perfect storm. And so that gives us a value of where we would want as a limit that financial resilience reserve, but we hold that. At the moment, we are using that for the cost of living crisis, including wage rise. So that came in above what we had budgeted for. We budgeted around 2.5%. It came to 4.5%. We have shortfalls in income, some of that post-COVID. So our car parking fees, leisure fees, and which has continued to kind of sit low really as we're in the economic crisis, and energy costs. Incidentally, we did tie into a contract for our energy costs. When we set the budget, the timing of that contract and the budget setting, we were out slightly, so the contract hadn't been signed at the point we set the budget. So our gap on energy is in relation to the budget, to the contract value, and not because we're hit with rising energy costs. So we were actually in a fortuitous position of having signed that contract. I know other authorities are not in such a strong position when it comes to the energy costs. So, but we covered that off again with the financial resilience reserve. We are using 53.5 million of reserves, a small amount of contingency budget as well. So that's the sum total of those reserves, be it through review of reserves, financial resilience reserve, and contingency, which brings that overall risk of overspend down to £42.3 million. That is a very slight improvement of 2.2 million since month 6 through spending control. We implemented rigorous spending controls back in July because we could see the risk coming through on the reporting. And as the report says, we must start to see strong delivery before our Q3 report to assure us that that risk is being well managed. So the organisation is looking across its spending. We have 3 panels in place, spending control panels that are reviewing the spend occurring across the council. So one around workforce, one around procurement and commissioning, and the other one around facilities management and property costs. And so we are working very, very closely with corporate leadership team and directors, assistant directors, heads of service as well, to try and curb our spending. So that's the position. Just move on a slide. The high level risks within all of this, and there's nothing new since I've last spoken to you at previous scrutinies. The biggest ones of these remain our children's and families. Home to school transport in particular is a very large pressure on us, and Birmingham Children's Trust placement costs also a large pressure. We have a range of other risks coming through, but by and large, that top line really is the big area of concern. If you can move on for me, Jane, just onto the table, thank you. Here is the table that shows the 42 million. So in the bottom right-hand corner is the 42 million, but we've got a gross risk. So that is the cost of things coming through. So as you can see on there, the home to school transport costs at 16 million on that second line, Birmingham Children's Trust on the third line. They are by and large the biggest areas from services. And then towards the bottom of the table, you can see 14 million as a pay award impact, 10 million from costs of energy for our corporate estate. We've got some street lighting energy a little bit further up as well. But they are the big things around cost of living. So, and then we've got use of reserves in there as well. So some contingency, 5.7 million contingency, 47.8 million from use of reserves. And then we've got money that's come through from spending controls. We have got some of the mitigations within services, so they're finding routes to cover some of that off as well within those services. And if you can just move on to the final slide, thank you. And then these are the savings that we have rated as high risk. So we're still assuming delivery in 22-23. It's an improved position from 13 million of red savings. That is an improved position of 2 million since month 6. And there is an expectation of an improving position on savings delivery. So when I come back again with the month 8 report, you'll see a direction of travel to improvement on that. So that's where we are with those savings. So I've done that at a very high level for you this time because I think it's iterative, and I've given you quite a bit before. So, but happy to take questions, and you've got the full report in front of you as well.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions? Yes, Paul?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yes, Sarah, inevitably, we are caught in what you can only describe as a perfect storm. Of course, we've got reduced income because of COVID and lack of commercial activity, and we've got increased costs due to demand. However, we are using reserves to a large extent, but I want to focus on the high risk because we ain't got much time to sort it out now. Okay, it's reduced by 2 million from last month, so it's standing at 13 million pounds. But if you extrapolate that over a 12-month period, and we're give 2/3 through the year now, as far as those figures are concerned, it means that you've got to find, in a year, you'd have to find 39 million pounds. And at this late stage in the year, it's a bit of a worry. If I was down at the end of the corridor still, the instruction would be, if you spend any money, it better come out of your own pocket. So a total ban on any unnecessary expenditure would be the only way that you can start to close the gap. I mean, we can all hope for, and I've seen the projected grant from the government, which is better than we would have expected, I think. But notwithstanding that, using the reserves to the tune of 53 million pounds is a concern. Of course, as I say, in my little house, you can only spend it once. So when the wife goes to Waitrose and I go to Walden, there's a bit of a difference, isn't there? And as I say to her, you can only spend it once, girl. And this is a concern because I don't want us to be in a situation where, all right, we've got, I think, 12 million pounds extra next year in the grant settlement, but we still don't want to be dipping into reserves, which are diminishing as a rapid rate. So it's just a general comment.
I think financial resilience reserve is set up for these issues that may arise that you should never budget for. You budget for a certain amount of pay rise, this budget for a certain interest rate. And then we, at the back of the MTFS, you see we've had a really detailed risk register. We've said if interest rate, we're assuming interest rates last year would be, at this time, would be about 2.5%, 4.5%. So we budget for 2.5% and set a budget for that and make appropriate savings or adjustments. But then within the risk register, we then say, what could it go up to?
Yeah.
I don't think that I thought we'd be at 4.5 or 5% this year, so we may have said an extra percent. So we work out what the cost of an extra percent would be. We'll work out what the extra energy cost would be. Inflation's higher, it's much higher than we would have anticipated. So then we then set aside some money in the reserve for that eventuality to pay. So some of this is what the reserve is there to be used for. So we are using it for that reason. But we can only spend it once, as you say, and that does put pressure on future years.
You couldn't plan.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it as tactfully as possible for a 6-week nightmare. We saw the loss of confidence in the markets and trust.
We never thought that. So some of the, but you are right. We don't want to use that. And but what we have seen in previous years, and just your analogy of the Indian cricket team, that on the capital side,
I haven't come to the capital yet.
So this is on the revenue side. It's reversed, where actually you have a good first innings where you're really pessimistic and you services then do project the worst case scenario. But as the year goes on and things aren't as bad as they expect, the numbers come down. I think we've seen the last 2-3 years where we have had, and then with spend controls, with them by the year end, come back with.
Yeah,
hopefully there'll be some of that this year.
I looked at the capital spend, and it's getting the profile right.
Yeah,
we know when it's going to rain. We know when it's going to snow. So let's get the profile right. So
we've taken that back to the teams this year, and hopefully the next year's budget we are profiling in a better way. Yeah. Especially projects that haven't started. Because they'll start in the new year, they won't start on the 1st of April. You can challenge them back so when we'll start. Because that will then help me with the borrowing.
Well, exactly. Because otherwise you're holding money that you don't need to hold, or you've entered into a possible transaction that you don't need to enter into.
Exactly. So that's the message we've got across, that there is a real pound impact.
It's a mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you both. Now, the planned procurement activities to consider the reports. These were considered at Cabinet on the 13th of December on planned procurement activity. So we've got Steve Sandbrook, who's online for this item. And I would just like to say there is provision to go into private sector at the end of the meeting if there are any issues raised by members in relation to the exempt appendices.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. As this is a standing item, members hopefully will be aware that this sets out 2 reports. The first report is for planned procurement activities that are coming up during the upcoming period. And that is both for non-key decisions, those procurement activities that fall below the thresholds related to what would constitute a key decision, and also a key decision planned procurement activities. These were discussed at the recent Cabinet meeting on the 17th of January. There were no additional comments that came forward from Cabinet, and the reports were taken as tabled. So I'm more than happy to take any questions or raise any points if there are any specific points of commercial discussions that need to be tabled. Then we would then need to go into sort of session outside of the public scrutiny.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, so for the work programme, we need to agree the work programme. So in the January meeting, it's going to be the month 8 financial monitoring report and budget scrutiny. And just to note that there is no February meeting, but there are 2 meetings in March on the 2nd and the 30th. And the briefing on S106 and CIL policy a procedure which had been requested at a previous meeting has been scheduled for the 2nd of March meeting. Do members wish to raise anything else? Well, feel free, Paul, if you want to.
She does one of them, but I'm going to actually.
Okay, well, the date of the next meeting, to note that the next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, the 19th of January 2023 at 2 o'clock. Are there any petitions? Okay, brilliant. Right, is there any other urgent business? So, in the absence, in between the meetings, in an urgent situation between meetings, the chair, jointly with the relevant chief officer, has authority to act on behalf. Okay, thank you very much. And I think that concludes. Yes, that concludes our meeting. So thank you very much, and I'd like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.